Now I know a lot of us fly tyers are really attracted to bright, shiny, flashy flies, the old school wet flies, the big streamers, the steelhead flies. And I like these as much as the next guy, but sometimes you just want to tie an easy pattern that's going to catch fish. That's what I'm doing today. Stick around. Hello everybody, welcome to Savage Flies. I'm Matt, thanks for stopping by. So the pattern I'm talking about today is probably the easiest ant pattern out there. It's terrestrial season here in Maryland right now. I was out on the Gunpowder last weekend fishing cicadas. Still cicadas all around the place. I couldn't get a single fish on a cicada. The only thing I caught any fish on was a small ant pattern. So I figured I'd tie a different variant from the one we did a few weeks ago, which was the foam ant. This one's a deer hair ant. Now, one tip about this pattern, it's made of deer hair, and we all know deer hair is pretty hollow, so it does float really well, but it's not a real high floater. I mean, it'll sit up there in the surface film, and you might be able to see it, up to 15 to 20 feet out, but unless it's just really clear glass water, you're probably not going to see this thing more than 20 or 25 feet out there. So how I will often fish a pattern like this, I will use a 2 dry fly rig. The first fly I tie on is something just a little bit bigger. Maybe it's an elk hair caddis or some kind of Catskill style fly. And then off the bend of that hook, I'll put, 12 or 16 inches of maybe 6X tippet to a small pattern like this ant or beetle that's going to be a little bit harder to see. It might be riding down in the surface film or just an inch below. So I'll fish this pattern just like I would a single dry fly. You toss it out there and you have the one fly that you can see. That's really how you're gauging your drift. If you're getting a good drift with your visible dry fly, then chances are pretty good that your second fly is drifting pretty well too. So you're watching your pretty visible dry fly and the general area out there. If you see some kind of rise near your visible dry fly, and you will see a rise, even if the fly is, an inch under the surface, if a fish comes up to take that, he's going to make some kind of disturbance on the surface. You might see him porpoise a little bit, you might hear the little slurp, or you might see a tail come out of the air. But if you see that near the fly that you're watching, chances are pretty good that the fish came up and took your ant. So do us a favor, if any of you folks out there fish like this with a 2 dry fly rig, let us know in the comments. And if you have never fished like this, give it a shot. It could really increase your hookup rate. So again, today's pattern, probably the simplest ant pattern out there, can be a real fish catcher. I think you're going to like it. Let's give it a shot. So there you go, in the vise, the deer hair ant. Probably the simplest ant pattern out there. Now this is a size 16. Put that into perspective. Here's a dime. You can stack 3 of these guys on a dime. Now I am tying this on a 16, but I will also tie it on 14s. And occasionally a 12. I've probably got a couple of 12s in my box, but more commonly 16s and even 18s. So standard dry fly hook, standard length, and I'm using some thin thread. This is a black 70 denier. Just lay a little base down right in the middle. Now for the one and only material, black deer hair. So let's go with about this many right here. And to the naked eye, it doesn't look like I have a whole lot of underfur in there, but there's probably some. So I've got this little Stonfo comb, hair comb. I'll just pull it through and it'll get a lot of that out. Maybe not all of it, but most of it. And if you want to put this in your hair stacker, it's not a bad idea, but I will just go in here and trim the tips off even. So hang your thread from right about the middle. That's where the middle of the 2 segments of this guy are going to be. So a couple of wraps right there, not too tight, but then you can go ahead and bind these butt ends down right here. And I haven't let go of this yet. One tip I've learned from tying a few of these is how much hair you use. Probably estimate low. So whatever you grab, you probably grab too much. Then just, thin some of it out. And don't put these wraps too tight or you will break some of the fibers. And it's okay if you do because we've got plenty here. So catch it in, well around the bend of the hook depending on how long you want your abdomen to be. I gotta watch the point of my hook right there. I was nicking it on it. But I'm gonna spin a few wraps right here and bring my thread up to the middle of the fly. Now I haven't let go of the deer hair yet, but I'm gonna switch hands and then just bring this up over and just let it kind of wrap all the way around your hook. And you're gonna have to make this wrap with your opposite hand and not real tight. If you do it real tight, you're going to flare this deer hair out. And it's not the end of the world if you do that, but it might make the front half of the fly harder to tie. See, it's starting to flare on me, and that's fine. I'm just going to use a few thread wraps to get me a little bit more forward. And that middle section is going to be the distinct, midpoint between your two segments. So lift this up, and let's take our thread back up to the eye. Now we're going to create one more segment just like that. So kind of pull this forward, let it go all the way around the hook, and then put a couple of loose wraps right here behind the eye. Maybe a little bit tighter if you want. Now that's our second segment. So let's go one more tight wrap right there. We're still going to be able to get our tippet through the eye. So spin one wrap to get your thread back to the midpoint. Now we just pull this back over, and this time I do kind of pull it over on the top. I don't necessarily wrap it all the way around. And a couple of tight wraps right here. And you have an option. Do you want to go ahead and whip finish it right now or after you work on the legs? I'm going to go ahead and do it right now. I think it makes it just a little bit easier. I don't have a lot of room to work with here. With this fly, I have my camera and backdrop really close with this size 16 here. So I'm going to do a 3-turn whip finish because I don't want to build too much bulk in there. I want to keep distinct segments between the front and the back. And a 3-turn should help me out there. So let's snip that off. Now for the legs. What you want to do here is just take 3 or 4 and pull them off to the sides on both sides. And then I'm going to pull them down. And that might be a little bit more than 3 or 4 on each side, but I think we're going to be fine. So I pulled those down, and they should stay there for just a second while I reach up here and snip all the ones on the top. Pretty close. About as close as you can get it. Okay, now let's trim these legs. So there's the bottom ones, and these, cut them pretty short. Okay, now do the same thing right here. And then crinkle them up a little bit if you want. Ants don't have perfectly straight legs. And there you go, we're really done. It's got a beautiful profile. If I was going to put a drop of head cement, and what I typically do, just the tiniest drop right there on the top, and hopefully it seeps into those thread wraps, and we'll make it a pretty durable fly. So that's it, the simplest ant pattern there is, the deer hair ant. I appreciate you watching, folks. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.